Hi, my name is Dennis Poyer. I'm one of the owners of Savoia Fleet Services in Denver, Colorado. We're going to go over some maintenance tips today on a Class 8 truck. And if you look at your truck every day, then you know if something's out of place when you lift the hood. On these mostly is just a visual look. Oil leaks, anything you see, hoses that are broke, clamp that's gone, anything you possibly see. Also on the maintenance schedule, depending on your truck, depending on what oil you run, if you run a synthetic oil, a lot of times you can go a lot further than a regular oil. The thing is, you should lift the hood, check your truck front to back every morning. If you go over on your oil changes, you're going to end up having engine trouble, depending on how far you go over. Same way with the fuel filters, you go too long, you can end up losing power. I know some guys can go 40, 50,000 miles, but you need to bring it in at like half of that interval, just because if you don't, the kingpins will gald. They come in, the kingpins are shot, or we had one towed in the other day, the guy couldn't even turn it. That grease job is going to cost you $50, $60. It's way cheaper than kingpins at $1,000. We have guys that'll come through the port on I-70 coming into Colorado at Grand Junction, and they'll get checked again, say going out in Fort Morgan on 76. They'll pass in Grand Junction and they'll flag them for a bunch of stuff in Fort Morgan. But a lot of those checks are good because they'll find stuff that you might not find, because a lot of guys don't lay on a creeper and go from front to back, to where the DOT people will lay on a creeper, go front to back sometimes. They'll get you for lights being out, brake adjustments out of service, crack spring, cracked in the frame, something like that, that's out of service. When you get stopped at a DOT check, they'll have you step on the brakes, should be 80 pounds, a lot of times they put more in, and if they're out of adjustment, then they can make you sit there and wait. Most of the newest trucks out there for probably like the last 10, 15 years all have automatic slack adjusters on them. And these pretty much keep up so you don't have to adjust the truck. But every now and then you'll find one that doesn't adjust. Best thing to do is get under and look at it with your brakes set, and you can measure the distance between the can and how far the slack is moving. And depending on the slack adjuster, the brake can type, it's going to tell you a specific 2-inch, 2.5-inch, whatever it is. A lot of the times the owner-operators will take care of the brakes themselves, but just because they're automatic slack adjuster doesn't mean they're all working. So it's a good idea when you get underneath to look. Also, inside the brake drum, as they get older, you'll feel a lip in there. And if you look at your brakes, a lot of times they'll look like they're wore out, but if the lip is in there, you still have a lot of brake left. Next time you change, you're going to end up putting drums on, because that's another DOT violation. If the lip is too deep, then they will take and tell you that's got to be changed. The DCA level in these, the newer trucks either have a blue, a red, mostly that antifreeze, you don't have to check the DCA level in for a while, but when you check it, and if it is bad, that's a drain and fill situation. Also, we take an oil sample on every one, and that tells you if there's fuel in the oil, antifreeze in the oil. This truck here usually gets the emission filter changed between 80 to 100,000. The air cleaner, this is a fairly small air cleaner, depending on the conditions you're running going down the highway. If you're in dirt, it's going to take more changing. If you run your oil longer, you're going to build up more carbon. This filter will plug quicker. And also, when this gets plugged enough, it'll kick a code in the dash and let you know, but it should be changed before that. On your belts, you need to keep an eye on those. Look at those for glazing, if they've been heat, cracks, anything like that. Most of the new engines have automatic tensioners on them. You really don't have to check the tension on it. But every now and then you should pop the belt out, spin the idler bearings, and make sure they're not wore out, they're starting to go, stuff like that. The inflation, most of these are 100 pound, 110 pound, depending on the tire. Best thing to do is look on the side, it'll give you the max specs on it. You need to look for wear on your tires. If it's, you run your hand like this, you feel it, the toe end's either in or out. Also, if the truck's got a lot of miles on it, it's a good idea to check your front U-bolts, because you'll be able to see it wear. So it's important when you grease the front end to pick it up, let the front axle hang, or the front spindles hang, so when you grease it, it will get up in there. If the front end's loaded, a lot of times the grease won't go up through it. You should have about 1.5 inches of free play at the top of the clutch, And the vehicles that are equipped with clutch brakes like this one, when you step down, you should feel the clutch brake about 1 inch to 3/4 off the floor. If you don't have that, or the clutch is letting off real high, then that's got to be adjusted. Another thing too is when we adjust the clutch, first thing you do is reach in and spin the clutch brake. If it doesn't spin, it's fine. The 2 tabs are there. Look at the facing on both sides, because a lot of times you'll be able to step down, you'll feel it, but you won't be able to get in gear because the clutch brake, the teeth are tore out and it's just spinning. At that time, you have to go in there with an air hammer and cut it out, put a new 2-piece in there. But it's pretty important because you can put anywhere from $2 to $3 grand in one of these trucks putting a clutch in it, depending on how old the clutch is, the cross shafts are good, anything like that. So the more you can keep your clutch in the proper adjustment, the better off you are. Basically, these have a synthetic lube in them they've had for years. And the transmission takes a CD50, the rear ends take a 75/90, some take a 75/140. And they're synthetic, and they should be changed out about every 250,000 miles. At that time, when you change it, you can pull the plugs out. The plugs on the top and the bottom are usually magnetic, and you can clean all the filings off of it then. But it's a good idea to get that out of there, because if they've been in a hot position where they overheat, most of these have transmission coolers, the rear ends don't. So if you're hauling heavy, you know, you've got to check that fluid sometimes more often, change it more often than 250,000 miles. Another thing also on maintenance is the fifth wheel. That's a big part. A lot of these guys that haul dirt or tankers, they don't get out from under their fifth wheel a lot. So when they come into service, if we service it with the tanker on it or with the end dump on it, we'll try to drop it, grease it, and then put it back in. That's a big deal, because if you don't get the grease in there, you'll end up with big grooves in there. It'll start to eat the top plate out. Also, the jaw adjustment is pretty critical too. And some of these are self-adjusters. Some of them have the bolt on top and you can adjust it for the tightness. When that's all the way out and there's a gap there and you're still loose, it's time to build the fifth wheel jaws. And when you're building them, you need to check to make sure this isn't keyholed. And what that means is it'll come up, instead of straight like that, it'll get wide from the pin going left, right, forward, back. At that time, the whole plate needs to be redone. But most of these are self-adjusters, so when they go out, it's time to put the fifth wheel on it.